Good afternoon. I called this meeting of the Land Use Working Group Subcommittee on Public Works on Wednesday, September 10th at 1:03 p.m. To order. And this meeting will be recorded for future on-demand viewing. And Shannon, do you have us recorded here?
I think she just stepped off.
Oh, well, I guess it looks like it's recording. So I'll welcome everyone attending and take attendance of members and staff. And I see I am here, Linda Miller, and Phil Griffiths is here. Just say yes.
Yes, here.
And then I also see joining us Kathy Kukalo from the Finance Committee, observer, and Russ Carlstad, who is our Public Works Facilities Director, and then Alan Cathcart, who's the Director of Public Works. Have I missed anyone else? Okay, and then I think on our screen, I have the agenda items. We do have a set of minutes to approve, and I wonder if anyone had any questions or corrections for those minutes.
No, they seem fine to me. Thank you.
Okay, so then I'll take, well, I'll just say
I'll move to accept the minutes.
Yeah, move to approve the minutes of August 28th, 2025. All in
Second.
favor? Okay.
Whatever. Second, whatever, however you want to do it.
Yeah,
So,
all in
thumbs up.
favor? Okay, Linda Miller, I'm in favor.
Phil Griffiths, yes.
Okay, so they are approved. The next item on our list is to discuss the organization of the subcommittee. We at this point don't have a chair, and probably should have one just in terms of helping Shannon organize the agenda for follow-up meetings and making sure that the minutes are up to date and approved so that people can see them on a timely basis. So Phil, how do you feel about being chair?
Well, my concern is the broader one that if we're not able to change the meetings, I'm not going to be able to participate in the whole subcommittee. And I talked to Mary Hartman and Sven and Judith about trying to get someone to replace me so that there's full representation. So I don't think I have to find out if there is someone on the recreation team who can do that. And I will know that tomorrow night. We have a meeting tomorrow night, which I'm going to see if there's someone who can step in to do it. But I have a feeling that it's just not. If Fridays are going to meetings, I'm not going to be able to participate, and I can't really fully. It makes no sense to be on the subcommittee if I can't fully participate in the whole thing.
No.
So I really shouldn't set myself up to be chair right now. And you can revisit it at some point after a decision, if I come to a conclusion as to what I can do or not.
Okay.
And
well,
by the way, thank you for stepping in the last week, Linda, for since our last meeting and taking some charge of it anyway. So thank you.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's understood, and we'll see if when he joins us, if Rob is in a situation where he would be willing to be chair. But if not, we'll probably wait and see who your replacement would be, and we'll sort of limp along with me, for the duration.
Sort of jumping in there. Thank you, and I appreciate that, Linda. Thank you.
No. It's understood, and I just personally would agree with you. I think both for members and for staff, Friday afternoon. I don't mean to speak for others, but Friday afternoon is not an optimal time, which is probably why it's the only time that's still available. But that still doesn't make it right, and it would be really a sad thing if we lost really capable people like yourself from being able to participate full-time on the committee. But we know that I'm sure you'll have an ongoing interest in the topic no matter what happens. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that they can accommodate a better time for everyone. The next issue, and I'm going to plow ahead just to make this efficient for all in as well, is really to look at the subcommittee charge. And I think that is something that probably Russ teed up really well for us at our last meeting in terms of, why Public Works has a special place in terms of the land use working group. And I think that if we look at, in my mind, the report that we were given on TVA and all of the limitations that it states in terms of the key facilities for Public Works, the 133 and the 135 Kais Road buildings. And then I think also if we look at the interests as expressed in the Envision Concord 2030 in terms of wastewater treatment, it seems to me that those really are the areas where we can highlight in detail the rationale for Public Works being called out as a special consideration for a review in terms of land use. So I did not so I think maybe we can go through that and then perhaps come up with a I know that the group that is working on consolidation of towns facilities does have a charge, and I think we could probably come up with a charge that explains that rationale as well. I would be happy to come up with a draft and then ask if Russ and Alan and then you and Rob can look at it and we can review that at our next meeting. Does that seem reasonable?
That's great. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So then moving on to the needs assessment. One thing that I wanted to sort of work through is really what are all the facilities that we're really looking at? And I'm a little bit confused. So part of this is a data needs as well, but and this is really maybe something that Russ and Alan can walk us through. I don't know if they're prepared to do that this meeting or not, but really, if you could walk us through what are all the facilities that we should be reviewing in terms of existing conditions. We have the information on 133, 135 Kais Road, and hopefully we can all visit those. If I haven't yet, I'd like to schedule that. But then it's been mentioned that there's facilities at the compost site on Walden Street. Then there's a water treatment plant on Old Bedford Road. And then I don't know if we need to look at water facilities and, water infrastructure. And also it seems like there are a lot of other facilities where either activities or people are kind of tucked away throughout Concord. So Alan or Russ, would this be a good time just sort of review the extent
Sure, I think,
of what we have in front of us?
yeah, we can kind of help on a very broad level. You're correct, Linda, as far as Public Works has multiple sites for various reasons. Some are sort of critical where under Public Works, we have water supply lands, which generally include or encapsulate a well of some sort, maybe a structure. But those areas are, while they're probably worth noting and capturing, they're restricted to the use of public water exclusively. So the functions of those are entirely based on production of drinking water. They don't coexist with other activities. Some exception could be in an area like Hugh Cargill Well, where there's a parcel of land that's sort of an odd configuration that could potentially at least be, I think we have to put on the radar that it could be available for some other use, but it would require sort of a more formal process to subdivide it. Once it's water supply land, you'd have to go through a process to take it outside of water supply, but that's one exception to the rule. Other than that, with Public Works, you talked about the wastewater infrastructure, and there are small parcels of land, just so this group understands the complexity, and that's really identifying pump stations, lift stations, things like that, very small parcels with infrastructure, certainly not something we'd consider for redevelopment. They're sort of dedicated for that use. An example is the Lowell Road Pump Station, which is actually on the Public Works site where he presently exists. So we would not relocate that. For instance, the Assabet Sewer Pump Station on Main Street by the Assabet River is another example of infrastructure under Public Works. As examples, if we go beyond drinking water and wastewater, you get into our compost operations and storage of materials for yard waste, storm response, that sort of thing. That is the compost site off of Walden Street. Again, I think as part of this assessment, we should at least capture it. So we identified what it is and its existing use. That does coexist with other municipal use, including solar farm. We also use it for storage of equipment, even temporary. Our winter maintenance equipment will be stored over there outside the summer season, just because of the space constraints we have on Keyes Road. I will say the wastewater treatment plant, I will just, if you like, I'll share the screen, and maybe it can be helpful and inform you as far as I do have what we call near maps. If I share this, hopefully you'll see an aerial photo. Is that up?
No.
Yes, there it is.
Oh,
Yeah.
is it? I don't see it. Hold on.
Okay, see if you can change your screen.
I think maybe if I stop sharing, then I can, there we go. Okay.
Okay, so this is the Keyes Road complex, and just to orient you, this is sort of 133, 135, 141, and then the sewer pump station I was talking about is over here. That's on Lowell Road. So no matter what happens with redevelopment, that would not be relocated. I want to bring you over to the sand beds and the wastewater treatment facility over in this area here. So this is an aerial view of the wastewater treatment plant. What's interesting is these yellow lines or orange yellow lines are property lines. So they're just different parcels. But what makes up this operation is inclusive of, here is the brick and mortar infrastructure of our wastewater process. These are former sand beds that were used, which have been abandoned, but have been considered for repurposing. There's a cell tower over here. And as you enter in the access road off of Old Bedford, there's a large field which had been, contemplated and obtained as part of the wastewater, long time ago. I don't have the deed in front of me, but this was also area that would be used and allocated for wastewater. So examples of parcels of land that fall under the responsibility of Public Works as we speak. Just so you know, this is currently leased for agriculture. But again, just as we talk about potential, what are the areas accessible to us? We'd first look at our own properties and then we'd look at, others. So that's 2 large parcels that could be contemplated, for some sort of redevelopment. Difference with wastewater and drinking water is you don't have the same protection requirements around the wastewater infrastructure that you would around drinking water. Just sort of an FYI.
Question,
And
Alan, isn't there some kind of facility up on Knox Road?
yes, and then we talk about Knox Trail.
Knox Trail, yeah, sorry.
Yep. And basically, let me find that. Let me gotta zoom out and look for I need the parcel map. Once I see it, okay. It's taking me beyond Concord. I'm gonna go to a different view. I'm gonna go to a different view just so I can find it.
Sure.
All right, here we are. So it's interesting. This parcel of land here is town owned. And this is where there's a solar array presently with a light plant. This is the school bus depot. This is the town line with Acton right here. The axis is this is Knox Trail. And so we have some municipal properties over in this area. And this is currently mixed use. Russ, what's in these facilities right now?
37 Knox Trail has an admin function for the bus fleets. And there's some secondary townhouse use on the second floor, as well as a woman's rescue kind of mission up there with facilities. And the basement is storage for building department, archives, Board of Health. Anyone who needs storage, it's packed with data down there.
So
Is that where the regional housing services is?
Yeah, I think that's who it is. Yeah, they have an office
Okay.
up there. Yeah.
Got it.
So anyway, those are just examples of and then what's important to also understand at the wastewater treatment plant. I'm going to zoom back over there. We do have a lot of material storage over in this area here. Can you see this?
Yes.
So this is used for a lot of material storage used by highway grounds engineering. Sometimes we even use these sand beds for staging. You can see here,
Mm-hmm.
the staging for construction work that needs to be done in town, that will allow a contractor to use on a temporary basis. And then I will just kind of zoom out to show you the landfill, which is another important asset. Where do I have that? Sorry if you're, where are we? And here's the school. This is the landfill. And what I've got here is some of the active areas. So this is the landfill on Walden. You can see the solar array up on the hill. This mounded area, and you can almost see the relief in here. This is the former landfill with a cap. So the kind of use is restricted, but it makes for a good siting of solar array. We have some storage up here. They're looking at putting a cell tower up in this area. Presently negotiating a lease for that. And this is primarily the most active area for our compost site, yard waste, storm debris, that sort of thing. So, and really what it speaks to is the depth and breadth of operations. It's not just an office space, where people, work. It's basically for materials, storage, and things beyond your typical administrative managerial functions. So
Right.
That's super helpful, Alan. I have one observation and one question.
Hmm.
I think it's important. It's the right question to ask. that we list everything, but I think we could pretty quickly categorically take off any drinking water supply properties as something that we want to consider. I just think we can, let's not spend time thinking about that because I think it's a non-starter. If someone wants to suggest differently, we can certainly entertain that, but
Right.
I would suggest we just take them off the list because that's not something we want to be messing around with.
Yep.
Then my second question is, if you think about, possibly moving activities out of those locations to other places, I think it would be helpful to understand what limitations, either sort of legal limitations or practical limitations there are for reuse of properties that you vacate for other things. Like you've got all the stuff at Kai's Road. If you guys were to move out of there, there's probably a whole bunch of limits as to what you could do there. Underground storage tanks, chemicals, cleanup. You'd want a sense of, were there things that you're never going to get there, or things that were just going to cost money, right?
Mhm.
Because that's another part of the equation. It doesn't suddenly, if we move you out of Kai's Road, we don't suddenly like, hey, here's a piece of property that, we can just develop. There's a huge amount of cost to clean that. And I think we need to get an understanding, because that's part of, if you recommend moving somewhere else, you got to look at what the cost is of making the other space reusable and whether there's any limitations. So particularly at Kai's Road, and also those sand beds over at the wastewater treatment plant. I don't know what kind of limitations there might be for using those for anything.
Right. So Phil, in terms of the 133, 135 Kai's Road, it seems to me that is more in the interest area, or the of what the uh, municipal consolidation subcommittee would be looking at. We would be looking at um, where are those facilities and functions going to go? But I don't think our committee would be figuring out, what that land would be used for. Would it be leased out? Would it, be, so I think that's something that the committees are going to have some discussion about. But my sense is that those properties are on their list, but more as a, how do you reuse that space? Whereas our view is that how many people, how much equipment, how much space is needed for materials, et cetera, once we go somewhere, is going to be required by those and all the other properties. So it's really trying to figure out everything that's spread around. If we were going to make one campus, how much would that be? Or are we going to, in a practical way, just have to find, 3 other locations that somehow can house what is not working well at Kai's Road? Or, one possible solution has been, well, how do we renovate Kai's Road? But I think the report from the facilities consultants pretty much left us with a conclusion that maybe renovation it isn't going to quite do it, because there's just not enough physical space for all of that equipment. But maybe all of that equipment goes in different places in different locations. So I think that's more our focus, but we need to clarify that with our charge.
Yeah, I think it's important to clarify, because at some point when you're doing all the moving pieces, whether that's within our committee or someone else, someone's got to look at, it's not simply a question of picking up stuff from point A, B, and C and moving it to point D. There's, what can you do at A, B, and C? And you may decide it's not actually worth doing it because that land can't be used for something else. It's one thing if you suddenly say, yeah, you can develop that land for housing and it's going to generate all kinds of tax revenue, et cetera. But if you can't actually do that, that changes your cost equation for whether it's worth moving the stuff to somewhere else. So I think that needs to be figured out somewhere, whether it's in our subcommittee or elsewhere. But I think our subcommittee, since we're looking at those public works facilities, should at least identify what we might know, the first cut at looking at those things. Like, you can't use old groundwater discharge sand pits for housing. I'm not sure if that's the case, but there's got to be some understanding of what we know is the limitation. Someone else may be able to say, how much would it cost to clean that up and make it useful for something else? I don't know. I wouldn't know how to plug that into an equation for commercial or housing, how that would change your equation, because I don't understand that. But I do know
Oh.
that there's likely to be some pretty big expenses in an old public works yard for cleaning up water, old leaky underground storage tanks, all that kind of stuff that shouldn't be
Right.
ignored.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any intention to ignore it, but I think at the subcommittee level, we're kind of
Okay.
focused on what we can do for
Yeah.
public works in general, and then once we get together with all the reports.
It may be I agree that it may be a question for the larger
Yeah.
committee. I just don't want
Yeah.
it to get lost, particularly because those public works parcels are going to have some legal or permitting reuse
Yeah.
limitations on them.
Right, and definitely the consolidation committee should know that that Lowell Road, location is just not going to be something that they can put affordable, any kind of housing on, or at least will have to be limited in terms of the scope that they could put housing or anything else there. Yeah. Yeah. So in terms of, I'm trying to think, I heard there's something over at the switchgear building. Is that something, again, in terms of information of where people are, where equipment is, that there's,
Yes, thank you. That
Yeah.
was, I think I got the address, I think that was 735 Main Street. In fact, let me see if I can bring that up. Yes,
And Linda, that's where the core of the facilities group is. We have some storage. We have our little shop there that we utilize. It's all part of the CMLP building. And
Right.
they're anxious to get that space back. Yeah, we're right in the back.
so if you can see Main Street here, am I sharing now again?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and so Old Road, this is Old Road to 9 Acre Corner, and Main Street split right there on this corner is, this facility that's presently occupied by facilities.
Actually, it's the one to the right of that. I think.
What's that?
Yeah, I think it's
Oh,
the
over
smaller
here?
one. Yeah, yeah.
It's this one.
I think so. Yeah, show the street view. I can tell better. They're both squares.
Yeah, well, it's Main Street, Old Road to 9 Acre Corner. Here's the intersection right there.
Yeah, one of those two, but
Okay. So fairly small, but it's also, dedicated for electric operations as well. So it's again co-used, but they're not going to be able to relocate that facility. And really importantly, we're just trying to capture the existing conditions. Just if there's questions, we know what the universe is, and the whole idea of identifying some of the larger parcels that we presently have ownership of is simply people are going to ask, did you look at your own property first? And I think that's what we need to do, is say, this is the universe of properties the town has for public works purposes. How do they relate to the future? I think it's just important to know.
Well, I think it's also important to know what would be, what would be optimal. That is, would it be optimal, as an example, to have the facilities people next to the engineering people? I don't know. Right now they're split. Are there, should we be looking at developing a campus that is, it has functions that will be most productive together in one location, but maybe we don't need to have functions that are very independent. That is the wastewater treatment facility. Maybe that can, remain on its own and be just as productive and functional as if we moved everything over towards that location. And that's the things I'm not understanding. I mean, it, again, so do we need a campus that is, just sort of what is the size that we would be looking for that would be most productive for the town? And if it's like, 4 different locations, for engineering together, that should be shifted to a location that's next door to the building department, that's one solution that's different than if engineering and facilities could be on their own, and that's all that needs to be together. And then, you know, everybody who's working on the streets, you know, just doesn't need to be at those locations. They can be off with all of the equipment and the trucks and have their own break rooms and, you know, be on a different kind of campus and schedule. So I don't really understand your business enough to
Mhm.
be thinking about, you know, how do we create the best environment that's productive, yet where we might actually have a shot at finding locations through, you know, in across town. Does that make any sense, guys?
Yeah, very much. In fact, one thing I just, and I'm going to be, I speak as I see it. The task at hand is challenging for a volunteer group. There's no question. And as you said, Linda, you don't know our universe, and even in our universe, there's probably different opinions, you know, based on, you know, just ask three people, they'll give you three different answers. What we need to do, I'm sure, is probably regroup and maybe have just a working session where we can have the various, you know, division heads, and we can sort of open this up a little bit for a conversation to talk about our operations in a little bit more detail with this working group. Go back to the study that was, you know, informed by not just Concord, but consultants who do this sort of thing and look at these sorts of operations. You know, we're not unique. You know, Public Works exists in all of these, you know, communities. And I think it might be good just to sort of take a pause and have everybody get around the table and have a good working session on what we understand was presented. And I think I may have mentioned this, the original plan that was put together by, I think, the firm TBA, there was conversations, but I was here, but I wasn't involved with them, and I was a division head. So it was not well orchestrated. I remember getting a set of plans to look at saying, this is what we could imagine for redeveloping this campus. But that was the extent of the conversation. And then regrettably, there was lots of transition with staffing. But when I look around the table right now, no department head was here when that plan was finalized. So I think for Public Works, we probably want to revisit that and get the input from the division heads. But obviously we have what was presented in 2020, but even in 2020, facilities wasn't part of Public Works. So it wasn't even, you know, contemplated as how does that work. I will tell you, just to cut the chase, most public work operations do work most efficiently. They're designed when they have appropriate land area to be in a campus. That's the norm. When you look around at our surrounding communities, the models are not for Public Works to separate the core functions. Highway, grounds, water, sewer, well, they have different primary responsibilities. They're generally maintenance and heavy construction in the right of way. So there's a lot of common activities, even equipment, and complementary opportunities. Engineering is a little bit less direct, you know, hands-on operations, but they support the operations and they work closely with them. And so I think what we want to do is just go through a discussion with the right division heads to give us an opportunity to talk about it, which I think would be helpful because we haven't really done that yet, to give you an opportunity to hear and actually ask the questions, which is nice because when you're living and breathing it, you don't think about it the same way. And I would propose that might be a good, you know, exercise for all of us. And quite honestly, we're doing something that generally is you hire third-party consultants to do. And I think we need to acknowledge that. And I will tell you, I'm trying to shadow all of these subcommittees just to get a flavor. You're not alone. Your volunteers being tasked to do, you know, professional work. And I'm not sure that won't be the outcome is we got a flavor, but we need this, you know, to take it to the next step. These are important decisions. And I think we can help you help the broader committee bring a perspective. But I think we got to be honest, is what is our limitations and what can we do and what are the limitations? And I put that out there because I see this going into each of the subcommittees I'm observing. It's not easy. And I think you're all challenged with the same, you know, we're doing the best we can, but we don't have staff. We don't have a budget, the professional expertise. I think we're trying to get our arms around general flavor, not the specifics at this point. And I will tell you, we have not had this conversation internally yet because we've been kind of shadowing, well, which way are they going and how do we support it? And I think we're all in the same position of trying to wrestle that one. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it'd be very helpful to have a general understanding about, you know, an idealized situation from the directors of the different divisions, because then you, at least you have a target that you're contemplating, right? Whether you
Mhm.
can get there or not's a different question. So I think it'd be very
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah, yes, I'm afraid we've got a process of, we have answers that are looking for the right problem, so that we have a Peabody School campus, and we have a 2229, and we have an MCI Concord, and so we have all these solutions, and we somehow think that, oh, well, you know, we can figure out what, you know, how to put this puzzle together. But I don't feel that that's top down is, you know, you have to have a bottom up understanding of what the dynamics are, and otherwise I think you end up like we were all at the Ripley building with like a hodgepodge stuffed into buildings, because that's that kind of fit for a while. And I would agree. I think that maybe the best feedback will be that we move into a more professional assessment in this process. But yes, I think a great step would be to have that overview for everybody, and so we can have that at maybe when Phil figures things out and Rob shows up, maybe we can also invite other members, because I think all of that information would be very useful as well for the you know, it's certainly the you know, municipal consolidation thinking. I don't know in terms of public safety and whether that would be quite as useful, but I think if we had maybe a joint subcommittee meeting, that would be excellent. One thing I did want to talk about, since you talked about looking at properties, and I wanted to share my screen, or share screen again if I could.
Yeah, do you have the ability? I don't even know. Yeah, okay, good.
I think I do.
Yeah,
So
you're good.
I went through and I looked at the land that you highlighted.
Mhm.
Can you see that now?
Yeah, we see your file manager.
Oh, you
And-
see
Yeah,
file
we see the files, we don't see the document yet.
You don't see the document. Okay.
You've got a list of public owned land and
Yeah.
XYZ.
Let's see if I can move this over somehow. And
It's already on. There you go. We see a map.
now,
Yeah.
okay, so this is I was just trying to go through the GIS and get more information on the areas that you were discussing. So this shows a bit of these are the hash marks in terms of conservation restrictions. And then see if I can get, and this is the floodplain.
Yep.
This is historics land.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some of these we can't. This is solar. So this is everybody that can use solar, and I guess there could be solar arrays here. this was wetlands. And you could, it's kind of hard to see, this is all the municipal land, but you can see that all this section here is in the wetlands. And
And
then,
just to help Phil, and that's the cemeteries are over there, Sleepy Hollow and the Knoll. So,
and then I got one of contours. So you could see there's probably some, I don't know how much of a contour there is, but there's something to be thought out. This was interesting in terms of trails. So obviously people are over there enjoying the land as it lays. But then when I got to this was a little bit of a problem. This is habitats of rare wildlife. And
primarily the Blanding turtle
the Blanding turtle
and the
and
British violet.
and this is the, so my question here, this you couldn't see the yellow, but this is the rare species, which is probably what you're talking about.
That's right. Yeah.
So the question is, would municipal use for public works be something that there would be an exception to natural, and these natural resource, I assume, restrictions or not?
Yeah, there'd be ways of mitigating.
Yeah, it's
we've
not, it
been
wouldn't,
here.
it's not an exception, but anything that's proposed can be mitigated. There's no
Okay.
blanket exception for public works, for municipal uses, but most of the time you can negotiate a mitigation of some kind.
And so would that be practical in terms of the amount of land that we would be considering over here, in terms of if you put a full public works campus? And is that something that we can explore in some way?
You mean you're talking about over at the wastewater treatment plant area?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
most of that is fairly disturbed, or I mean, it's already disturbed for a bunch of uses anyway. So I think it's worth exploring. You could certainly figure out a way to, but most of that land is not pristine habitat at this point. So you would be able to mitigate most of it, I would think.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's good news.
Yeah, it's a
But
process.
otherwise,
And
I mean, that to me looked like the only thing that would be problematic in terms of developing this land. Other than it costs money, but
Right. And Linda, I think we could also sort of identify the areas that are, the cemetery areas are sort of designated, and, it goes to Phil's question of what areas are, what restrictions are, in deed or use. I think we need to, sort of get more detail. And I'd say that's townwide. I think that ask was made. I don't know, because I haven't been compiling the information on all the municipal properties, but I think that ask was made at the broader level of identifying municipal lands and what do we know about them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I don't know who would be working on that. Maybe.
Well, I think that was through Megan and Shannon, and they're quite honestly, Russ and I have been shadowing things, but we're not point people on the project. It's Megan Zamoto is the point person.
Okay.
yeah, I think it's, my sense is that wastewater treatment plant area and those old sand beds could be a fruitful area for something. It's probably not big enough for a whole campus, but for thinking about it, that of a more efficient use for public works stuff over there, it certainly seems like a worth spending some time exploring. I don't know if that's my sense about it, Alan. I think it'd be worth
Yeah.
doing.
And Phil, I will say, and there's been conversations about the, potential expansion for wastewater. The whole idea of the groundwater discharge was first contemplated there.
Yeah.
And we know we've done a preliminary geotech work and hydraulic loading, and we think we could get 155,000 gallons a day if we split stream for treatment. And that has value, again, above and beyond just public works, but to the town. So these are,
Yeah, absolutely.
you know, there's a lot of complexities in these things. So I think is, you know, Linda's, you know, point is, you know, we got to capture what we know and then figure out, you know, where do we go collectively.
Yeah.
But I think that workshop would probably be, yeah, I propose that as I think would be a good exercise internally anyway for my staff. So if there was a value of you folks participating and we have that conversation, then I think it would be a win-win.
Okay, no, I think that's excellent. It kind of gets us close to you know, going to take public comment and then we can discuss the next steps because I think we've sort of reviewed what we can today, especially without Rob here. So yeah, if there's any public comment, Kathy, we would, or Russ, I guess, but
Well, I guess one comment I would make is, as Alan said, as I sit through these various meetings, I think all the subcommittees are trying to get their arms around their various charges, as well as where is the data going to come from? Not just the data of what exists in the town and where, but how do you come up with a benchmark of what would be the optimal utilization? So the comment that you're not alone, I think, is quite apropos. And the other comment I would make is, Phil, I've listened to some of these comments about scheduling.
Yeah.
And it just seems that some of the folks, I think you have a number of members that are on the select board and have other positions that the days of the week just have got chewed up.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge in every way.
Yeah, I don't envy the person trying to get the screw all into the same room at the same time.
Right. So thank you for asking me for comments, Linda.
oh, thank you for attending these meetings, and I'm sure being on the finance committee, you have more than enough meetings to schedule as well.
I know, and this is going to be a big deal for the town. I mean, we have a lot of work to figure out what we want to do, but as part of that, it's going to be what is this going to cost, and you know, ideally, are we going to get to a place where we can sell off things and balance cost and revenue? So I will stay tuned as you all move along and hopefully be helpful as you get to that point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
So I think, let's see, in terms of our agenda, our next steps, I think I'm going to try and put together a sort of a reason we exist in a charge. And maybe with Alan and Russ, just sort of enumerate all of the locations that we have, and then begin a process of consideration of what is the big tent, you know, in terms of who should all be together in terms of productivity, and then are there other functions that you know, don't have to be under the same roof? And I again, I I guess the big question is, do we need administration right next to a huge equipment shed? In my mind, just sort of, or are there options in terms of the scope of a location that we have to look for? And then maybe Alan, you can come up, we'll throw the dates at you. So maybe you can come up with maybe a next meeting where Phil has either figured out if he can work with the schedule or provide a new member to be on this committee. And then, we can sit down and maybe with the municipal operations group, really dig in to a little bit of a greater understanding of what we're looking for and whether it's even a scope that's attainable without getting a professional consultant involved. And I wish Judith or Sven had been here as well, because but hopefully they'll both be listening to our subcommittee and reading our minutes.
Yeah, and I do know both will check in and out, and they may, so I will communicate what I've heard today with them. And I will look at a schedule. It will not be a Friday afternoon where maybe we can get together and, just have a roundtable on the, our municipal properties, what currently exists, and hear from the division heads as far as their kind of what they see as the potential needs and challenges. And again, they're just opinions. Ultimately, we got to balance that with what does the industry do? Because I said, we don't want to, design something around, individual, thoughts, ideas. We don't want to reinvent wheels, right? That's the third party expertise who can tell us. And are there models where the administrative function is separate from the operations, and how does it work? I mean, there's got to be, it's a big universe of public works out there. So.
Anything you want to put on next steps, Phil?
No, I think that's great. I think I think that hearing from the division directors will be very helpful for all of us to understand what's going on. And we've got a good set of kind of data pieces to pull together. So I think it's good progress, at least. And we got to get back to the whole committee and share our concerns with everybody to figure out how we can move forward. But I think it's very helpful.
Great. Okay. Thank you all. And I think we don't need to take a vote. Well, I think we can.
No, and for the record, Linda, thank you for taking on sort of some organizational stuff up front and putting together an agenda. It's very highly appreciated.
Okay. Thanks. I'll have a good.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.